A fireside chat is where we, like two people who know each other, who have a normal discussion about topics that would be interesting to us and hopefully to you as well. So this is what the fire chat is, and we've known each other for quite a long time. Right? So
Yeah, it's almost 10 years now.
yeah. So and you've obviously worked with several Romanian studios, right? So and right now there is a studio in Bucharest that you work with. So for me, it would be really interesting to see your point of view. Right? You've worked with us for many times, for a long time. What do you think is? But at the same time, the Romanian industry didn't have like a big hit so far, like an independent big hit. What do you think that we should do? What do you think is missing,
Right.
or what?
So I think, yeah, I think for the first big hit from here to happen, the first thing is like people need to join the panel tomorrow where they're going to talk about that topic. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of like connections between. I'm originally from Brazil, as you know, and there's a lot of connections. I think the way Brazil developed and Romania as well. I like to think that we're connected by Sclavizaura, as our gift to you guys, like many years ago. But I think countries which don't have like a strong local market kind of have that problem where you're not used to kind of having to sell your stuff. So you kind of either sell abroad, or you don't sell, or you just do some work for hire or different things. So I think that's the thing that I always feel it misses the most here is like people who understand the business. I mean, there's a lot of people here who are very passionate about games, people who know what good games are like, but then it's hard for people to step outside of themselves and think about like a separate consumer. So I remember one of the first games I worked here, I will not talk about the designer who did that game, Eddie. He was it was like a Harry Potter game, which supposedly for kids, but it was like a Metal Gear game that people died all the time, and he was like super proud of it. It was like, yeah, my game, nobody goes through level 3. I'm like, this game is for kids. Like people need to like finish the game. Yeah, so I think those are the bigger difficulty. I think is like just people who, even in you're talking about our studio now and the Banananco studio here. Like those are the positions that we have open right now that are the hardest to find. Is like producers, designers, that have that kind of sensibility. And those are the because all of our games are actually led from here. Like we don't do back in the old EA Mobile days. We would lead the games from London or LA, right? Like now, all the games are actually done. Like all the product leadership is here. Like we just kind of do green lights and stuff. But like the game is actually all developed here. So we need people who understand the whole thing that Travis was talking about, like from the consumer to the end. And I think like the more companies that do this go through the whole cycle, then the closer you get to the hit.
Yeah, and we see this trend with many companies who now develop the full product from here. Gameloft does it as well, so you do it. Other companies do it. So if we take this under consideration, right, that there's things that obviously we're good at because there's such a there is a reason for why we do good games here in Romania, but there are also things that need to happen, right? So if you moving away from the corporate world, like we're talking, like if you had an indie team, right, a small indie team, you don't have the budget or the resources of a big company. What would you choose? What platform would you choose to develop on? Like,
it's a good question. I think so. If you have an indie team, like I think the first thing you gotta find out is like what do you want to do? Because like some people they just want to get their they want to self-express. They want to get their game out. And then some people actually want to make money and do different things. So it depends on what I mean. It's different for everybody, but like based on that, you should make a decision on the platform because I think that is, and also what kind of game you want to make. So I'm a big believer in, particularly if you're new. Well, actually, if I can just give one piece of advice that that's kind of worth it, it's like whatever you want to do. Like start doing that and keep doing that for a long time because like all the great studios I've ever seen are the teams that like work in the same thing over and over. Is not the teams that start by doing a game here and then a completely separate game next year and then another completely separate thing. So I think that the sooner you realize what you want to do and the sooner you get into it, the better you get to like a great game, I think. And you know, the platform, like I said, if you just want to get your game out, then depending on the genre, maybe it's Steam. I mean, it's such a great day, like great time, like you know, Travis also mentioned on the Golden Age. One of the things that he didn't touch on, but like when I started in games, like to make a game, you had to like you know pay $100,000 to Sony to get a license. Then you have to buy a dev kit, which is like $10,000 each. Like just to get into the thing was like super expensive. And you know, I was in Brazil at the time. Sony wouldn't even sell those to Brazil because we didn't have a Sony Computer Entertainment of Brazil at the time. So like we had to fly to the US, put her in the luggage, fly back, and then like work with them. And then Sony would ask questions. They're like, no, we're in Texas. It's fine. We had to do those things to actually get it done because, and now like you know with $100 you can get iOS license, or you know you can just make your own game and put it on Steam. So it's a much like so much easier now to get your game out. So just think about the audience, like who you're making the game for. If it's for you, then just look at the games you play and then put it there. But like whatever it is that you play.
Yeah, so basically, you think you can be successful on mobile, you can be successful on PC, you can be successful on Steam.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like you know when you just have your own company, then it's a little easier to make. Like if you have a startup, then it's a little easier to be because you're looking to make more money than what you spent and enough so you can get the next thing going, right? When you're working for a big public company like us, then it's a little different because like we only make X games a year, so we need all of this to be like really big. So like all of our games are like big because they have to be to justify like we get involved in them. But if you're just making a game for yourself, then you can actually you know sell it premium. There's a lot more open like opportunities you have because you know if you just sell X, then it kind of covers your cost and like it's you have a lot more flexibility when you're small.
Yeah, so if the advice, and I completely agree, but like a small team or a team that is sized properly for what you're trying to do and spending enough time so that you know your product, I completely agree with that. But there's, I mean, as an indie, you are thinking, well, you need to have enough funding for that, right? And then you need to probably either stay independent or work with a publisher. So. As somebody from Romania, what would be your advice? Like if you try to get some investment?
I mean, one piece of advice I gave, like I would give to myself, is like if I could. So when I started in Brazil, there were no jobs. There were literally no game companies in Brazil. So I had to start my own company. Mm-hmm. Like I had no choice. I had to start a company. If I had the environment where you guys have here, which has already like a lot of like established companies, I might start working for one of them. Because you get the experience, you get like you know somebody's paying for your learning, like there's a lot of benefits for like from that. And then you know a few years later, once you're more established, then maybe you can kind of go and branch out. Also, like if you happen to work on a game that's successful, then it's a lot easier for you to raise money. Whereas like if you come from nowhere and you're trying to raise money, people are going to be like, who are you, right? So like it's nice that you can say like, hey, I worked on this game and that game. So I think those, if you don't have that experience, I would suggest that you maybe try to do that first. I mean, if you already have that, then yeah, I think raising money is an option. Like Mihaly just mentioned, like it's a little easier if you're trying to do something different than just a game. There are not a lot of investors who just want to put money in like, hey, I'm just going to make another game, and not a lot of investors. I mean, there's still a few that do, but most people want to put like in tech or on some sort of innovation related to gaming, not just in the game.
Okay, and for publishers, do you think they're needed, especially for mobile? Do you think, or?
Yeah, so I think the way things went was, you know, you definitely needed a publisher, and then you know the iPhone came and kind of like trashed it all. Then like suddenly you could make it without a publisher. Now I think we're getting back to the time where the publisher is useful. I do think it's different. You know, before like the publisher like did all those things. Like now a lot more responsibilities with the developer. So the you know like Travis mentioned, like the monetization, which is something that in the past used to be this. Developer makes the art and then throws to the commercial side, and then the marketing guys kind of do the dirty business of selling. Now you actually got to merchandise stuff inside your game. Now you actually got to think about the game, like how to sell stuff inside the game, right? So it's like the developer needs to be thinking about those things. So you already take like some of the responsibility that used to be for the publisher. And now there's a lot more flexible publishers too. So like there's publishers who want to do everything, and then there's publishers who are happy just to do the marketing, publishers who just want to do like say the hosting plus some cross promotion. Like you can. There's so many publishers and different sizes that you can what I would recommend is like you shop and figure out the one that works for you, like the matches exactly what you want, because there's so many options today, and of course the deals will change with that too. But the world's getting complicated. Like China, you can't go to China without a publisher, like without a local publisher, right? Russia is going the same way. They have a ton of, like, if you have, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you go above like 50,000 DAU, which is the magical number Travis had here, you need the data from the Russian users need to be in a Russian server that the Russian government can access. So like there's like a bunch of like regulations that are popping up every day that makes it harder for you, whereas like 5 years ago you could just run a game and it would be worldwide. Now you actually got to be a little bit more careful with the countries you go to, and I mean it's still nice in the kind of the Western world, but there's a lot of countries which are getting complicated. And if you have kids, then there's COPA, and then Europe has a completely separate thing. And pretty sure I think you're gonna have to have a server in Europe and a server in the US, like for the data for the users, and so it's getting more complex. And publishers are good at those things. Like they are not necessarily good at coming up with the best game, and that's why they partner with like creative studios, and that's kind of why we have like a studio here that kind of does their thing, and we just help them, because I think that's kind of where the publisher value is today. Is like doing all those things, the muscle to get the thing everywhere.
So the fire is burning. Nobody here is listening. What do I have to do to have a publishing deal with Bandai Namco?
The number one thing we look for is, unfortunately, and again, like that's what I'm saying. Like there's different types of publishers, but like the bar for us is like, have you done a game like the one you're pitching to us before already, and you had some, success or necessarily not, but like. We're always looking for people who already done it once. So we want people with experience in that genre. So let's say if you come to us and pitch a game that you've never done, then we're probably not going to work with you. Unless, let's say, your team is amazing and you've done such amazing things that we can trust that like your new thing is going to be amazing too. But in general, we look for, let's say, if you're going to make a random example, let's say like an idle game. Like we would go and say, like, have you made those before? And then, like, what were they like? And then we can look at that, and then we can kind of judge. Because we're not necessarily in the business of like training people, because my mindset is like I have a limited amount of dollars and games I can make. If I'm gonna train a team, I'd rather train like the team we have here in Romania or like the teams we have in other places, right? So if we're gonna give somebody a chance on something that they've never done before, I'd rather do it with one of our internal teams. For the external teams, we try to partner with people who are actually good at what they're doing.
Right, and just to be sure, you're looking. It's not my CV, right? It's not that everyone in this team has done sport games before or idle games before. It's just as a team, as this team, we have a track record of at least one game.
Yeah, that's what we primarily look for. I mean, the team thing helps too, but like ideally, you guys already work together and build something together, and kind of have that, because it's hard. I mean, I've been, not as long as Travis, but I've been around for a little while, and I noticed like. There's something magical about a point in time when you work with people when things work, and then trying to replicate that later. Even let's say like we all went away and then we're trying to come back 10 years later, the same group of people, it might not work because people move on and they change, and just because some people clicked in a previous job doesn't mean they're going to click again. Like I've had some experience of rehiring people who used to work with me. They were superstars, and it did not work, and it was really shocking to me. But after a while I understood like people move on, their lives change, and they get excited about different things, and like it's no guarantee that's going to work just because it worked again. I mean, that's why I think the team dynamic is so important.
This is I actually, knowing that we were going to have a discussion, I asked people around, right? And look, what would you like to hear? And I had one question that was surprising to me. Maybe it's not very politically correct, right? But so there's this leader in the industry who said, look, I have teams and I have studios that are different from what they used to be 15 years ago when everybody was in their 20s, right? And now what we look at is like a more normal, what we would see outside of Romania, with more normal spread with like people who are seniors, and in their the average age would be more 30 plus. I'm sure that you've seen this in previous places where you've worked. And obviously there are advantages but there are also things that you have to look for.
Yeah.
How were you in this situation? Do you think? Do you feel any difference from what the studios used to be and how they are now?
Yeah, but also, one thing that further complicates my point of view is that I moved. So, when I started in Brazil, there's no, I couldn't hire anybody with experience because nobody had it. So we had to like train everyone, and most of everyone was like young or out of college or that kind of age. So, and now when I look at the teams that are in Brazil right now, yes, suddenly there's like people with 40 years of age, which wasn't the case before. So I can see that there. When I lived in Finland, similar, like a lot of the people are young and now they're not anymore. I think the only place where I can really see this is in the US, because in the US there's people who have been doing this for a long time. I had like an art director, which is 25 years of experience making games, and it was kind of very humbling to work with these people. And then you notice that focus shifts to when you have this kind of talent, then focus shifts a little bit more to. Kind of depends on the person, but yeah, the work-life balance and that kind of stuff. And sometimes you want a balance of just from the creativity. Like you actually probably still want the balance of like new young people who don't know what they're doing, don't know any better, and those are the guys who are going to come up with the next stuff, right? So the thing I like about being in the Bay Area is that you actually get a lot of like you can choose like a couple of like really talented people, and then you can get some really young coming up people too. Yeah, it definitely changes. You got to worry a bit more. Like the other thing too is like was like back in the day, like every Friday you knew like you're gonna go out for drinks and do these things and etc. And now it's not. People have kids, so you kind of have to build different. Even when I organize events now, we're saying like, oh, let's just go to the bar, and I'm like, no, I can't do that anymore. Let's go, let's say bowling, where we can kind of maybe drink, but also like people who are not gonna drink, that's fine. In the US, it's even further complicated by a lot of food demands, and people are like paleo and all those other things. So I gotta like think about.
They would just die in Romania. They would just starve. It's like.
Yeah, I know. Well, like I said, I'm from Brazil originally. Vegetarian dish was chicken, so that's what we call vegetarian.
It's pork. It's pork in Romania. It's the vegetable. Yeah, I had a good manager who described Romanian cuisine like, "Hello, we killed an animal and now we bring it to you." So they would. That's solved here. No worries. So.
But you need the soup first.
Yeah. So. Now I would like to. We have about a few more minutes. I would like to move to something that is. I really want to know. Are there any trends that you see coming, especially in mobile?
Are there any trends?
Yeah, what's going to happen? Like, is there any innovation that you actually like, and you can any secret sauce that the management of the group sees and that you can share with
us?
Yeah, something that.
No, I don't know. I think like because we're we're a big publisher, we're working on the more established side. I think from our point of view, then AR is probably the next thing, because the install base is about to get started in a couple of days. Like the install base is going to start, so that's probably the most promising. But even that, like we would probably hold and think a little bit more. Trends. I mean, like if you watch the charts, you can see there's like some different types of games coming up. Story games, which something I always loved. Like it was always really bad for mobile, and we've been in mobile for a long time, and you know how this is like anathema. You never talk about like having story in games, right? Because like who's gonna read that stupid font and like. But the reality is like, I didn't quite see this coming, but like the phones took over in such a way that like people don't care that the screen is small anymore. Like they watch videos and read and do all those things, and that's what I think it's enabling all these sort of games. So there's certain things which I thought were never going to work because the screen size was too small or the UI was too fiddly, but people don't care. They just want they don't want to have another device at home, or they want to be able to do the thing on their phone, like whatever. So I think that opened up a lot of markets, like story-based games. So if you think, if you've been mobile for a while and you remember those rules, like don't do this, don't do this, like you can probably revisit like 30% of them. So like that's like another thing that might open up some stuff. Yeah, I guess AR is probably the most obvious. That having some form. I don't think it's going to be like 100% AR games, but like having some form of AR in your games might unlock some stuff as well. Subscription is another thing that people are talking about, like how to get instead of doing this free with in-app transactions, and like just trying to come up with a way that people can pay for subscription. Some games already have kind of mixed model, but trying to come up with ways that people just because the whole Netflix habit, like people are happy to do pay $10 and get like whenever they need something, it's there. So I think you can probably figure out something like that with games too. There's a couple of people trying, so that's another area which you might want to explore. The really good ones I'm keeping for myself, because we're a business.
Okay, so I'll try and bring to the discussion something that we can have some more lively discussion. Like there's people who hope, and there's people who predict that the current model, especially for mobile, is going to an extinction event, right? Because there's this trend. There's several feedback loops that go in and feed it, like UX prices, user acquisition prices going up, people getting fed up by always the companies and our economy designers and data analysts trying to get the maximum amount of dollars for each person, and there's these loops kind of contribute to a moment where it's not gonna be profitable anymore to function in this model. Are those hopes?
I don't know. I would think those hopes are being had by people who remember what was before those days, right? Because a lot of the consumers like that's what they're used to. They want free. They just want it, and of course they'll pay for stuff that they care about, even if it's virtual. So there's a lot of if you ask somebody who's younger, about making a virtual purchase, they don't care. I mean, they actually would rather sometimes buy a digital thing because they don't want to have like a big house with the stuff that's going to just pile up in a corner. Like they're more possession free. So I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, I think the consumers are completely happy with this. So I think people who worry are generally people who remember the previous times and they're like, oh, the good old days, like Travis said, the good old days were so much better. Like that said, I think there's a risk that this gets abused to a point where people get so jaded because like the other thing that Travis mentions is like people are smart, right? So like if all you're doing is gaming them, eventually they're gonna realize and this so yeah, it could be that we're gonna kind of like kill ourselves by doing this. It's quite possible. There's a big discussion I think to be had about like ethics and like how do you how do you do this in a way that is sustainable and you're not just like screwing up people, but people having because you don't want your game to be the last game somebody ever plays, right? Like some people think like if you ask some of the guys in the industry, like they're not worried about that person's next game. They just want to like dry that person up and get everything out of them, right? But hopefully we got into this because we love games and we love playing games, and hopefully we leave some person for the next game.